everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 5, if you can believe it. We're halfway through the season 1 of Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. So, okay, we need to talk. We need to sit down, have a little talk. I wrote it out because I've really enjoyed this series so far. I love this series. I'm having so much fun with it, and back in episode 1, I told you all a couple things. First of all, not to spoil me or give me hints or clues, but the main thing was I said, I'm going to be watching this Donghua first, and then I'm going to be going through the novel after that. So with spoilers, I'm sure I'm going to miss things. That's just the nature of it. Like if you watch Donghua for the first time, I'm coming from it from a culture that does not normally watch Jansha or Donmai or things. So there's going to be things that I miss. And so I said, let me read the novels and get through that, because the novels, I have the paper in front of me, it's in English, I can go through it, and then if there's still stuff that needs to be explained or talked about after I get to the novel, then yes, absolutely. I want to enjoy this series without people trying to explain every little element, because once I get to the novel section, and as long as it's not a spoiler, then sure. But the mods brought up, there have been a lot of talk in the Discord channel on Patreon. The mods brought up there was something I apparently misunderstood. And I was like, okay, they're like, hey, we don't want to tell you what it is, but there's something you've misunderstood in the episode. And I was like, okay. So I went back through and I rewatched the episode. And I was like, oh, is it that the settings being accessible means that the out of character function is unlocked? And they were like, yes. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, but I want to say this. I had been in the Discord channel and there were some black boxes, and I was driving, which you should not text and drive, not advocating that. I also don't advocate looking at Discord while driving, but my thumb had slipped and I hit a black box and it was unlocked, and I read the contents of it and I was a little bit upset about it. And so I kind of had a little moment of spiral, and I went back a few of those messages that were black boxed, and I was like, okay. So I want to address something real quick, because I'm the type of person that I want you to tell it to my face. I want you to tell it in the Discord, tell it in the comments, but don't put it behind a black box. Say it if you're going to say it. But when it's behind a black box, I don't normally check them, so it feels like that aspect of my control, and it's my server. So I'm like, if I want to click a black box, I absolutely can, but I don't out of principle, because that's just how I am. I have very good self-discipline in that regard. So, a couple things. One that was brought up, and I will read it verbatim because I hadn't noticed it, but I'll tell you, the comment was, I just don't get how out of character function is unlocked can be misunderstood at all, since she seems to know what out of character stands for, and it was explained in the first episode. Well, let me explain that, because episode 3, I didn't notice it. If you watch the whole discussion, you'll notice I never mentioned out of character being unlocked. I said the settings being accessed. That's because WeTV, which is the app that I'm watching this on, their playback function sucks. I can't tell you how hard it is to get screenshots to share in the Discord and to use as the thumbnail, because every time unlike Crunchyroll or other streaming services that let you take that little thing and go back like second by second, WeTV does not. It skips seconds. And so when I go back, if I'm not watching the whole thing throughout the discussion, which I haven't been because that's tedious, then it skips over things. So I'll be dead honest with y'all. I didn't see the words out of character is unlocked. I didn't see it during the reaction. I didn't see it through the discussion. So that comment about, well, I don't know how she misunderstood, because I didn't see it. And if you watched the discussion, you'll notice I never mentioned that text as I was going through, which means I didn't see it. So that's why. It's a simple mistake. But just the attitude of that language came across as being a little bit like, oh, why'd she not get that? Is she not smart enough to get it? And that kind of upset me a little bit, you know? And then another comment was talking about, well, things like the Golden Core is basic Jansha 101. But they did notice and acknowledge in their comment, like I have, that Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessing are the only Jansha I've watched. And y'all, I love you, but I'm doing 8 shows a week, a full-time job. I'm teaching, I'm coaching. I don't have time to research Jansha. I just don't. And it's been over 2 years since I've watched Modao Zushi to know certain plot elements like that. So I am sorry I don't remember that. You'll just have to forgive me on that. I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be. I'm just watching this for fun. And that's kind of the other thing about it, because the rest of that individual's comment said, also about the whole out of character function and the isekai genre, which I don't want to know about, because sometimes when people start explaining genres, they say things that give me hints and clues as to stuff that's going to happen in this series, and I'm trying to avoid those spoilers. It's not that I don't want to learn, but I want to experience the show like you all did for the first time before I dive into it. And so they said, I know it's important not to spoil anything, but some of the inaccurate theories are becoming more and more not very bright, rather than funny guessing. And then they asked if the mods would help. And it really kind of made me mad and a little bit upset, if I'm being honest, because insinuating that I'm not smart enough to watch this show and that my guesses and theories they're not just funny, they're pointing the fact that I'm stupid. It was deeply hurtful. And it honestly, that Monday, it was a bad Monday to begin with. And I was just having a bad day. But in that moment, it made me, those types of comments where people, just couldn't say something nice, they made me not want to watch the show. They made me not want to read comments. They made me want to just back off and go, I'm not good enough for this, apparently. And that was really hard. And I enjoy these shows. I enjoy the show so much. And they did dampen my spirit, and it made the show seem a little less to me, And if you want to note that I should be getting the obvious, I would, rather somebody tell it to me straight or just, not respond. And so I wanted to bring this up because now it gives me this expectation that, oh my God, I have to be smart and I have to say, everything has to be, on track with it. It can't just be for fun. And that really hurt, So it creates this expectation that if I don't give smart enough theories or I don't tie everything together, then I'm not smart enough to be engaging in this content. And I know that that's wrong, but those type of comments put me in that mindset and make me want to turn away from a series and focus my attention on something else. And the worst part is I'm only 4 episodes in. 3 at the time. So it's like the individuals that made that comment have no faith in me in a reactor that I'll get there. Because that's my thing. I know that it may take me a little bit, but I will try and possibly get there eventually. You just got to have a little faith, right? And so I felt really bad after those comments. But luckily, a few days later, when my moderator said I could read the stuff on YouTube, you all were so kind and were so uplifting in your comments, and they made me feel so great. So thank you for that. Thank you, because literally you all being kind and considerate, they help me keep going and keep reading those comments. So I guess, I didn't want to get emotional, so I had to write it out and read it. Otherwise I would have been like a sob fest. Cause I sobbed that day so hard. I couldn't give a presentation because it made me feel so bad. But even if you're in Black Box and you don't think I'm reading it, be considerate, because now every time I see a Black Box, even though I know it's not true, there's that part of me that's like, are they talking about me behind my back? So just think of others and their feelings before you type and be mindful. And if you can't be considerate, then maybe don't comment. And if I'm not smart enough to get the things you think I should be getting for this series, then I might not be the reactor for you. But I hope I am. I swear I'm smart. I got 2 freaking master's degrees, y'all. I swear I went to school. It just wasn't studying Chinese fantasy, so I'm going to have fun with this series as much as I can. Torley4368 had an amazing comment talking about how, and I didn't even think about this, but now it's something to point out, that Shen's first mission is to literally defeat an enemy that wears the skins of other people, which is literally what Shen's character is doing in playing Shen. So I was like, oh, that's such a cool tie-in. I love that. But yeah, I just, those comments hurt. And I normally don't look at Black Boxes. It was an accident, but it did affect me a lot. And so I'm very grateful for the support that you all give me on here. And I hope that, and the people that were like, we love your theories, they're crazy. And I'm like, great, awesome. I'm glad you like them. They'll probably be wrong or get developed and evolve over time. Just give me a chance. In the words of ABBA, take a chance on me. I'll do my best. But yeah, I was a mess that Monday. So And that's the thing about it. Being a reactor, you have to have tough skin. You got to take it. And I get bad comments all the time. I get people that are rude all the time. I get people that are just blatantly awful. But the thing about it is those are so few and far between. But man, one rotten apple can throw you in a spiral for a day. And it takes sometimes 50 pounds of good apples to make up for that one. So, and those people probably didn't mean anything bad about it. I'm not mad at them. I'm not upset at them, but I'm upset at the words. I'm upset at the fact that it wasn't considered that, oh, maybe, what if she accidentally clicks on this and reads it? You know, because I would never say that about somebody else, right? There are reactors that I've watched that are not my cup of tea, and I'm just like, they're not for me. But I don't think, I try not to call anyone dumb or say or insinuate that they're not educated or that why don't they understand this? I try not to do that because that's hurtful, you know? So instead, they're just not for me. And that's fine. So that's all I got on that front. That's all I got. I've wasted way too much time. I've talked over 10 minutes about it, but it was driving me crazy. And I told the moderators, they were like, well, we don't know. I mean, how should we address this? I'm like, no, I'm going to talk about it in a video. I'm going to talk about it and clear my chest and just let that be that. So I probably will not get a chance to look at spoilers before watching episode 6 because of scheduling. I have to be gone, so I have to record ahead. That's kind of what I'm doing now. So when I come back to episode 7, I'll have lots of comments. So probably, so that'll be a thing. So that'll be fun. So episode 7, there may be a whole giant intro of like 20 minutes worth of questions. We'll just have to see, but please no spoilers. I want to experience the show, and most reactors don't have to keep saying no spoilers because they don't interact with the comments. They leave the comment section alone. They don't even touch it. They don't even listen to what y'all tell them in the comment section. They don't know. So, but I try to be that one that's different and read the comments, every single one if I can, unless they're spoilery. So what do we do? But I'm excited. We've met Shaw. We've met our Saintess. And seemingly, my thing with the out of character function, real quick, and we'll talk about it probably more in the discussion. I guess the other reason why I didn't think the out of character function would be unlocked at this point was, doesn't that seem too easy? I thought MXTX was going to make a whole plot point out of it, like it was going to be something that Shen had to work for, and that it was going to be this big epic thing. I guess that's the subversion of the genre, is that it's like, oh, it's just unlocked. Like that, and that's it. And it's like, okay. So my guess was back in episode 4 last week, that could be why the forces that be, Nightmare or whoever, is trying to keep the story on track, because now the out of character function is unlocked, and that's that. So, and I guess that would explain the manual, why the manual he gave him was updated because the old one was the one in the story and he's giving him the new one. That all makes sense now. And I would have gotten it when we got to the novel because I would have read out of character is unlocked, but I just literally didn't see it in the episode. And I feel like if people had watched the reaction and the discussion and heard me not say it, that means I didn't read it. So who knows? Who knows? I don't pretend to expect everyone to watch the whole discussions anymore. So I just, that's why the moderators are there, to make sure people know. So, and be nice to my moderators. They're really awesome people. So we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive into Scum Villain Self-Saving System episode 5. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's go. Oh my gosh. Oh, Lo, our sweet Lo. I love him so much. Oh my gosh, this is great. Okay, so like I said, WeTV's playback feature is god awful. It's just like the worst. So it will literally let me, like, unless I watch the whole thing through second by second, which I may have to do, if I try to skip around, it will not get seconds correctly or anything. It's not very user friendly. Let me just say that. Compared to other streaming services I've used, it's not the most user friendly. So what can we do? But oh my gosh. One thing that I like about this series, in comparison to Mode Aozushi and Heaven Official's Blessing, and this isn't really a spoiler, but in Heaven Official's Blessing, we really follow Shilian, the main character's perspective, and we don't get to see a whole lot from the couple. We don't get to see a lot from the lover's standpoint. We get to know about that character, but we don't really get things from their perspective, right? And then in Modao Zushi, we follow Wei Wuxian throughout most of it, and we don't really get a whole lot through Lan Wangji's perspective. We hear of the lovers, and we hear of their side of stories, but we don't really get something from, like, we don't get internally into their head. We just get like a third person observing experience of it, right? Here in this series, so far, we're following Shen and we're inside his head like 90% of the time. But like in this episode, we actually go in Lo's head and get to backtrack and see things from his perspective that Lo doesn't know about. So that part is fascinating to me. I'm really hoping we do more with that, because that could be really cool. So I don't know if that's going to end up happening, but I don't know. Watching Shen's two modes are either have a diva freak out or just pretend like nothing's bothering him. So like externally, he's just sitting there with the fan like, everything's fine. This is fine. And then internally, he's like, why is this happening? And just having like a big high-speed come apart. And it's absolutely hilarious. So I want to go through this. You'll notice I have current and past up here, because here's what's going to have to happen. If you watched my Heaven Officials Blessing reactions, then you saw I had like an unresolved plot point section on Whiteboard Coon. What's going to have happen is I'm going to have this is what the timeline is supposed to be according to the original novel, and this is the timeline that Shen wants to change, and then here's the timeline of the actual series. So when I get to the novel, I will get Whiteboard Coon fashioned out. We will get things planned out. Whiteboard Coon will be fine. It'll all be great, but we're not there yet. So we're not there yet, so what can we do, right? So that's just all we got to figure out. But with that being said, let's get into this episode here. I love that we start out with Shen just bitching. He's like, I only get 50 points for my handwork, but my hard work, but if you're going to deduct 1,000 if I violate it. And then what does it say? It's like, what did you say? I love the system's like, what? Can you repeat that? So he's like, you're going to give me 50 points for my hard work, but if I don't do, it's almost like Shen is like, well, I unlocked the out of character mode, so why can't I just do whatever I want? And the story is like, well, no, you have to keep following the storyline. But here's the thing. It's like Shen's actions, even though Shen is out of character now, his actions towards Lo are going to influence the hidden storyline. Yeah. They're going to influence that hidden storyline hardcore. And they're already influencing it, and Shen doesn't even realize it. Anime Annie asked in their comment, they're like, who is the most oblivious main protagonist? Is it Shilian, is it Wei Wuxian, or is it Lo? And again, without spoiling things, I feel like Shen is the most oblivious. Like, hasn't even considered what the hidden storyline could be. Hasn't crossed his mind that Lo could have a crush on him. Hasn't crossed his mind that he has feelings for Lo. Hasn't even touched on that. Hasn't even addressed it. Hasn't even considered it. Whereas I feel like Shilian was in constant denial because of their cultivation and purity, and Wei Wuxian was in constant denial but was horny on main. So let's be real. They're in constant denial because they didn't think it was mutual, right? But Shen seems absolutely 1,000 times oblivious, right? Shen, I cannot wait till they have the realization and they're going to be like, oh. And it's probably going to be when something really bad is about to happen. Like, it's going to be where Nightmare or someone, like, tempts Lo. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. And Shen's like, shit, I do care about him. Or he says something like, I don't care about you, and then realizes it in the aftermath that he does. We'll have to see how that goes, but I just love that the story is like, you cannot change things completely. You just can influence your actions, and that will influence the way things go down and maybe keep you out of the pickle jar. We'll see. And he's like, this is a battle in which an important plot where the two female protagonists battle each other while the male protagonist stands out, which is exactly what ends up happening. The two female protagonists, they fight each other, and Lo gets to stand out. So the same thing ends up happening that was supposed to happen in the original story. So in the past, we had the two females fight, which is the exact same that happens over here. And then Luo stands out, which is exactly what happens over here. So that's good. So we're keeping in line with the story. Good deal. And I just love that Shen's like standing with his hands on his hips, being all sassy the whole time, like, why? And I like that this is like a video game in the sense that everyone just kind of stands around like an NPC, like looking at each other, wondering what to do. We'll talk about that NPC-ness. That's great. You cannot change it as you like. And he's like, what? He's like, the original SQQ sends Luo there to get him killed. So here's the thing. In the past, Shen sends Luo to fight to kill him because he is the villain, right? And we're going to talk about all of this extra stuff up here that is in Luo's, like his flashback that he has. But yeah, so Shen is basically like, oh, in the past, he sends him there to get him killed. How do I work that to my advantage to where I'm satisfying him? How does that happen? And he's just like, but I need to flatter him. And I love anytime Shen looks back at Luo, he like has the fan, he looks so seductive. He doesn't realize he's looking seductive. He's just like, how do I do this? And Luo, meanwhile, is like, I am feeling things. And look, I'm gonna address the elephant in the room because it's been dawning on me and weighing on me the last 4 episodes. Luo at the very start of this was what, 14? And now he's like 17. Shen, I'm assuming, is in his 20s as a character, like early 20s at the start. Now he's like mid to late 20s. Here's the thing. I know that some people probably may not like Luo and Shen as a couple because of the age gap. And the 14-year-old thing would be weird. I think the reason I can overlook it is because in the OG story, we know that their final meetup is as adults, where they are full-grown adults that are capable of making these decisions with sound minds. As a child, as a teenager, a young teenager at 14, Shen is not trying to come on to Luo. He don't even know that Luo had an awakening. He doesn't even know. He's not even thinking about this. He still calls him a kid. Whatever. And even as a 17-year-old, he's still unaware. And so in my mind, my theory is that we're going to get to the point where they are both adults. And that's when the whole storyline of them liking each other really kicks off, right? And that's when Shen will maybe become aware. So during this whole entire storyline at this point, Shen is not trying to seduce Luo. Luo is just has a crush, and there's that. And I think because I've read Heaven Official's Blessing, who without, I mean, I'm not going to give anything away, but in Heaven Official's Blessing, you have some characters that have an age gap, and then it's not a big deal. So it's like as long as there is no like trying to get sexually or romantically involved with that character while they are younger, I can kind of be okay with that, especially if they end up being full-blown adults and then they have that conversation, right? Once they are old enough to be of sound mind and such. So that's fine to me. Because then Luo's like, Master, what are you talking about? And they're like, please follow the storyline. He's like, well, this is illogical. Why does the responsibility of the main character's satisfaction fall on someone else? And I'm like, but Shen does not understand what the point of the satisfaction is. Shen does not understand that satisfying Luo is going to make him like you more, and that's the hidden storyline. Shen's so unaware. It's just like, he's like, I don't know, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to be the one to satisfy him? And I'm like, well, to save yourself, that's the way it's gotta be. I also love the fan. Every time I see the fan, he just whips it out and he's like, just like a diva. It's so good. It makes me so happy. The second battle is of the Saintess. Yeah. Will be the contestant of our clan. Yep. So she offers herself to be the one to fight. She's like, who are you going to send to fight me? Right? And he's like, I can't send Luo out against her. That's not going to work. So he's like, fine. He's like, I don't feel like fighting anyway. And he goes and asks, he's like, you heard her. Does anyone want to take this round? I like he just asked, he's like, who wants to go? Bros, who wants to come up and do this? And they're like, I don't know. I will say, some of the NPC clan members' faces are kind of unintentionally hilarious, the animation wise. I'm fine with the animation. The fact that they animate Luo and Shen as well as they do, can't overlook. And Shaw had some good expressions in this episode too, but everybody's like, no. And at first, Luo is going to step up and fight because he wants to impress, Shen and be like, I'll do it. And then he kind of hesitates, like, I don't know. And that's when the clan member speaks up, right? And then Shen is like, she's here. The top female main character of Arrogant Gods and Demons Journey has finally appeared. The most beautiful woman of the lead disciple, the most beautiful woman in the Sky Tribe. And what's her name? Yeah, one of Luo's future harem. Yes, Luo Bing He. She has really pretty purple eyes, right? She's really pretty purple eyes. She looks like a character from, Modao Zushi from the Zhang clan. Yeah. So we have Luo Bing He. And Luo, as well as Shaw, become part of Luo's harem. Basically, what this story is doing is it's fighting heterosexuality. Basically, the goal of this series is to conquer heterosexuality because in the bad timeline for Luo, where Shen tries to kill him, he basically overcompensates for the fact that he's gay by getting all of these ladies, all these beards to join his posse and to overcompensate for the fact that he has a boner for the man that hates him in the original storyline and then ends up sticking him in a pickle jar. That's where we go. But here, I'm going to be curious to know if here's the thing. I'm going to be curious to know if they end up in his harem or not. Or what is that even about? Like all these 3,000 women, do they end up in his harem or do they not? I'm wondering if it's going to be a situation where they do as like just his platonic friends. And then maybe they all band together because they like Luo as a person. They all band together as his support network. And they all are like the fangirl club that wants to support him and Shen together. And they end up fighting like Nightmare and his forces or whoever the actual villain ends up being. And they end up fighting him together. That would actually be really cool. I would like if all of the women ganged up together and formed like a protect squad. And then they all like started writing doujinshi and fan fiction about those two. And Shin's like, what's happening? So I'm really curious to see how the harem is going to work with the storyline changing and what these female characters end up doing. Because by the end of the episode, Luo is definitely interested and impressed by Luo. And Shaw is impressed by Luo. So the question is, what are they going to do about that? Are they going to pursue him? Is he going to deny them? We don't know. It's interesting. And Shin's like, true to her reputation indeed. Here's the thing. Shen notes, that she's like the most beautiful woman of the tribe, of the clan and everything. But Shen at no point, he keeps going on about these women fighting and be like, this will be so exciting. But he never really calls them in. I just don't ever get heterosexual vibes from Shen at all. And he doesn't seem to notice, right? He doesn't seem to notice. So that's so funny to me. It's just like, it's the responsibility to protect the clan. So please allow me. And I like that Ming Fan's kind of grown on me in this episode. Because this episode, he kind of like gets in the group and he actually cheers Luo on. Which is great. I like that the little actions that Shen has taken, like Shen keeping Ming from crushing the jade or getting it away or whatever, like the little actions Shen took back in the very beginning of the series are already impacting Ming's livability. So I think that's so cool. I'm like, all right, show. I see what you're doing. That's nice. I like it. So it's like it's him from the peak. And they're like, don't look at her. Look at me only. I like that all the guards are like, oh my gosh, there's two women fighting. Oh, cat fight. What? Like just, in stereotypical fashion. I also like that MXTX is giving us multiple female characters. In a lot of the other stories that I've read from MXTX, there are not a lot of female characters. So I'm going to be curious to see what this harem does, like what their role is throughout the story. That's going to be interesting because you have this opportunity. What are you going to do with these characters? And I like that Shin's like, yes, go ahead and go. Love it. And so, of course, then they start fighting. The funny thing is that what it looks like from my perspective is like, if you've ever played a game, like if you've ever played Mortal Kombat or like some kind of fighter game, and you're just mashing buttons and the characters are just awkwardly moving around like they have no way, shape, or form. That's what it seems like. It feels like somebody just mashing buttons and making the NPCs fight each other. And Shin's like, is anybody else seeing this? And Ming Fan gives some like insane reasoning, like it's a dance, it's them attacking and touching into their spirituality and getting into their feng shui, and this is how they're doing it. And Shin's like, that's a bunch of bullshit. But he's like, they're just jumping around dancing. He's like, it's so stupid. And the moment he turns around to like, they fought the 45th round in their minds, Ming Fan goes on this huge, long-winded rant about what's happening. A battle with no bloodshed. And Shen is like, what are you talking about? I love Shen's face where he's like, what? Shen's diva face is some of my favorite in this entire series. I freaking love him. I love his diva face. I love that he's like, are you kidding me? And I love that he constantly has conversations with the author, which we'll get their name in a minute. And I'm like, that is an amazing pen name. Play on words, MXTX. I love it so much. He's like, they're just dancing. Dancing's a way to hide the aura flow. Yeah, and meanwhile, mess up the opponent's breath and rhythm. It's just making fun of, I'm assuming it's making fun of a trope where like female characters can't battle and have bloodshed. I'm assuming it's like I don't know anything about Chinese fantasy because I'm obviously outside the culture, but I'm assuming that maybe in Chinese fantasy, the female characters don't actually fight. They just have these my intellectual spiritual battles, and there can't be any bloodshed spilt because they're female characters. And that's why they ended up doing this. And it's making fun of that. That could be it. Yeah. And Shen is just like, what? He's like, I almost believed him. I almost believed Ming Fan for a second. He's like, everything is happening in a flash. The deciding factor will be their mental strength. Oh my God. And I love that Ying Ying is like, oh, you're so knowledgeable, Ming Fan. Here's the thing. I'm rooting for Ming Fan and Ying Ying now. Like, Ming Fan kind of started out being an asshole, but after he kind of got reprimanded by Shen, he's still a himbo. He's still kind of a brute, but he's less of a jerk. So I'm kind of rooting for Ling Ling to end up with him. I don't know if the story's going to change in that respect. And he's like, oh, well. And Shen's like, I almost believed you. He's like, Master Plane in the Sky is so good at making the ups and downs. Plane in the Sky is a really funny pen name. It's just so generic, but it's like almost like it's plane, right? But then it's like an airplane, and then it's like an omnipotent being in the sky because MXTX is the author that knows everything that's happening that we don't. So it's a nice little play on words. I think it's hilarious. And then watching the two of them battle makes me more envious of him. And then he looks back, and it's so funny because he keeps looking back seductively, like he keeps looking back during the fight, being like, I'm so envious of him. He gets these two girls. I guess that is pointing to Shen thinking that he's heterosexual. He's like, I'm so envious. Like, Luo gets these two girls in his harem. But he looks back so seductively. From Luo's perspective, what it seems like is like when two people are flirting and there's like stuff going on around them and they kind of look back at each other like, can you believe this? Can you believe this? And that's when Shen looks back, he sees that Luo is looking at him. He's like, why does he keep looking at me? He's like, Luo, I envy you. I'm like, oh, Shen, you don't even know. Doesn't even know. Yeah, I love that he's like, why is he looking at me? And I'm like, well, because he's not interested in these two ladies fighting. That's for damn sure. Oh my God. And then the moment he turns back, that's when he notices that Liu gets beaten. He's like, well, it ended when I turned around. What? I just love his animation of being like, I'm just so shocked. I missed the key moment. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. So yeah. And then they're like, well, what do we do? And he's like, losing is common. Don't take it to heart. You can win other battles in the future. So I feel like Shen, now that he doesn't have to be in character, him being nice and doing all these little gestures. Here, we talked about last episode. Shen just believes he's doing it to save himself and not end up in the pickle jar. But I don't think he realizes that he actually is that kind of a person. And him doing it is not just him trying to save himself, but him actually genuinely being nice and not realizing that he's changing the course of events in this way. And she's like, oh, I admire you for considering failure as something common. He's like, there's still one more match to go, Miss Shaw. You can admire me later. And then she's like, the last battle is against Elder Hammer. So the moment they set up the fact that the barbs on him are poisonous and that they'll poison whoever gets, you know, stung by them, I was like, oh no. I was worried about Luo the entire time. I didn't think of the possibility that Shen would jump in and save Luo and end up hurting himself in the process. And he even says, he's like, why do I keep jumping in to save him? I'm like, because you like him. And you just... he just doesn't realize it yet. That's the funny thing. So they talk about him and like, they're like, he's called this because he has a giant hammer. And Shen's like, what is this naming? I love that Shen making fun of the author for how they name things is like MXTX directly calling themselves out and being like, I know I give stuff weird names, but, or they're calling out the tropes in the genre, right? And so they have the he comes out with the hammer. He's going to use the hammer. They talk about the thorns on the armor. And that's when Shen's like, okay, what do we do? And she's like, well, it's normal for humans to cherish their lives. So who are you going to send to fight that could die? And I like that Shen goes, why would I like her previously? He's like, I did think I liked her, but now listening to her. And then he says, he's like, it's a completely different in the novel from that in real life. So in this, we have the idea that in the past in the novel, the player that is quote unquote playing SQQ, he liked Shaw. But here he's realizing seeing her in real life, Shaw is a nah. But it's just like, he's like, why did I like her? And I'm like, well, because you didn't have Luo crushing on you. And she's like, who are you going to send to battle? I like that she kind of has this seductive pose as she's like telling him to pick his fighter. And Shen doesn't want to send Luo out because he's afraid he'll get hurt. But he's like, I've made my decision. He's like, I'm sorry. I got to do this. No matter what the outcome is, this person will be your nemesis. She's like, you're just being an alarmist. I've always been the nemesis of others, not the other way around. And he's like, I'm sorry for putting you through this. And then he chooses Luo. Now, if he hadn't said what he said in the battle, I think Luo might have gotten the idea that he was sending him out to his doom. But luckily, the actions he's taken already to change the storyline are inspiring Luo rather than making him feel bad. He's like, are you doubting my decision? Because Ying Ying doesn't want to send him out. And she runs away crying, of course. So I'll have to see at the end if she comes back. And he's like, every nuisance has been removed. She can't be involved. And then, of course, Luo is like, okay, master, I'll go out and fight. And he's like, go. He was a little colder there, but again, he's trying to keep the storyline going. So Luo and him battle, and I love this battle. And they're like, Elder Hammer, did the kid manage to dodge the attack? And they find out that no, I like that Luo as the protagonist he's not instantly super strong and able to withstand the attack. He does get thrown around and hurt throughout this, and he legit has to like get his inner strength to come out shonen style and overcome. But he's not like, I like that at the beginning, he's not a prodigy. Luo isn't a prodigy, and I like that about his character. He's a character that has to work hard for what he gets. It makes him a better protagonist. So he ends up fighting the Elder Hammer here and going around him, and they're like, oh, he's useless. And at first, we need to go through I want to go through these motions that Luo has where he thinks back in the flashbacks, right? Because he goes through a process. I want to talk about this process. And they're like, oh, he's so useless. Why did we send Luo out? Like, they doubt him at first. Which, okay, so the original storyline is that Luo struggles, which we'll put up here. Luo struggles, and everyone thinks that he is useless. But meanwhile, and I'm going to kind of put it out to the side here, he talks about, he sees Shen talk about striking and killing Luo. So at first, we start with that moment where Luo is doubting he's doubting Shen because, okay, back when Shen told the demon woman, the Hot Topic lady, to go after Luo, he still had to force himself to be in character. So him sending her to kill Luo made Luo be like, does my senior doubt me? Is he trying to kill me? And so he's wondering that now that he's up against this, you know, seemingly impossible force, if he really is trying to kill him, right? And then that's when they say, look out, and he dodges. So he keeps dodging as he's battling and striking with his sword, but he keeps getting knocked. It's like Chumbawamba is playing in the background. He gets knocked down, but he gets up again, you know? He'll die if this goes on. And so you're a tough brat. And that's when he thinks back to, now this part, this is the cruelty and genius of MXTX. Because MXTX didn't make Shen and his character playing him, he didn't start back at the beginning and have Shen start at the beginning and affect everything that happened with him and Luo's relationship. No. What happened instead was that MXTX has Shen and the player playing him start out like a little bit into the journey. So Luo has these inner thoughts of Shen when they first met that are negative, but now all the stuff that Shen is doing for him is starting to contradict that. And it's going to create some inner conflict, right? Because you have this whipping scene where he's being tied up getting these lashes. And he says, oh, you can't stand it? You've only been hung for 4 hours. It's time for you to overcome your weaknesses. And the way we see Shen, he looks exactly like he does now. So you wouldn't think it's a different character. But he's being villainous there, right? So he sees him with the lashes and talking about his weakness and how he shouldn't be so weak. He should overcome it. And you're like, oh, that's kind of harsh. And that's what Luo thinks of as he's like getting his teacup. My question is, I wonder if Shen is thinking about this at the same time. I wonder if as Luo's thinking about this, we cut to Shen and he looks a little pensive. I wonder if he's remembering that moment or if he's just got this blank face. And Luo's like, okay. So he doesn't have any time to think. He dodges it again. Is your body tougher than my hammer? And he sends him flying back again. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is not good. And as they keep fighting, they're like, why does he keep standing up? I pity him. So he gets knocked down again. The Saintess is sure that she's going to win. And Luo looks over at Shen. And Shen's just standing there. Shen's just standing there with a blank face like, what did I do? And he's like, Master. He's like, I'm your disciple. And we see him like as a little boy when he first came there. He's like, I'm your master. I bow down to you. And he gets the teacup like dumped on him by Shen. He's like, do I need to remember your name? And there's a moment where Luo's kind of like, oh, does my master really, did he send me out here to my death because he doesn't have faith in me? So we have the tea pouring. And he thinks of that. My thing is, I think at some point Nightmare or whoever our secret villain is going to bring these moments up to manipulate Luo. He's going to try to make it to where he's like, you think that your master's like all nice to you, but just think back to all these bad times. And he's going to think back to the bad times. And that's probably when the Jade Pendant's going to be used for good or bad. It's going to go back to those moments. I feel like this is a setup to show us that Shen wasn't always nice to Luo. And even though he's nice now, that doesn't mean that those past actions aren't going to come up again. Because Luo tries to shake his head of it and not think about it as he's fighting. And they're like, tell me your name. He says, Heaven's Sky Clan, Luo Bing He. And he's like, great, I'm going to carve your name onto my hammer as a memento. So they keep fighting. The circle's getting smaller and smaller. He does a little spin. He tries to strike him from behind. And then he strikes the sword again. The fight's really good. I like it. I liked the fight a lot. It had a lot of, the whole thing of nearly getting stabbed in the eye with the sword, but getting the sword stuck in his hand. That part sucked. He's like, your attacks are weak. And then he gets knocked out, knocked back with the hammer. It sucks. So I want to get to the next, like, he gets knocked down. He's about to pass out. And then as he's going towards him, he's like, blame your destiny. And he's like, is this the end for me? And then Ming Fan is freaking out, being like, let's just surrender. I like the one guy that's like behind by Ming Fan as he's freaking out, being like, I wasn't going to say it, but And then Shen, he goes, Luo Bing He. He's like, what are you doing? You're just a few hundred years behind his ability. Are you giving up now? And Luo's like, a few hundred years? What? Are you encouraging me? Are you cheering me on? So at that moment, as he's doubting all of this, all this doubt is like hanging in the air like a big cloud, and Luo is gonna succumb to it, right? And think the worst, and think that Shen doesn't believe in him, that he's always been mean to him. This is all he has, and then he encourages him. Shen tells him to get back up. And he says, go on. Don't stop now. I know you can beat him. And he's like, stand up if your bones are still intact. I've put my reputation and the dignity of our clan on the line for you. And then in that moment, Shen like kind of smiles a little bit. Does he really believe that I can defeat this demon elder despite the few 100-year gap? And he's like, hold on, Demon Clan. And that's when he realizes he can use the talismans. I love his face where he's like, I can use this. It's very Modazushi. And this should work against you. And at that moment, as he's firing him, he's like, this was on the secret manual that Shen gave him. The exorcist spell. So yeah, so what I love about this is like, when did he learn that? And Shen's like, well, I might have included a thing or two in that manual. So we know about the demon spell that is in the manual that Shen gave him. So again, his actions are, you're reaping what you're sowing, right? So he's like, this was on the secret manual that the master gave me. And oh my God, as Elder Hammer goes towards him, he takes the sword back. He's like, sorry, I'm going to need this. Time for you to give this back to me. His nails are so long. And then he goes up to stab him. I love the lightning bolt, like when he strikes the ground. That part was really, really good. He's like, what is going on with that glare? He changed suddenly. I love Luo. Luo has the most intense eyes. Like his eyes are so intense in this. It's crazy. I use a sand attack like a damn sand shrew and tries to go after him. And Luo like dodges it and tries to parry him and strike back. Right? He's like, what makes you think you can defeat me? I want to get to the scene where he goes back. He's like, just a few words from your master. Yes, that's one of MXTX's big themes. Like sometimes our words have power, as we know, and the words can have power both for good or for evil. And in this case, they have the power to influence people and motivate them, right? And so the praise that I'm just saying, Luo may have a little bit of a praise kink, just a wee bit. Just a wee bit. But that's what he has here. And it's great. He's like, yes. And he goes down strike. And this, when he's striking the rock and strikes it over and over again. And I like Ming Fawn's like, oh my God. And everybody's watching. And now seeing the demon army watching Luo, I could see why they'd want to follow him later. So we'll see if anything happens with that. Are you trying to tell me that my master lied to me? Right? And the moment he thinks that he lied to him, he looks back to that smile in the carriage. The damn smile in the carriage that's the start of it all. He looks back to that smile up to him and says, thank you. And Shen smiles at him. And he's like, but how could I keep ignoring something so obvious until now? I'm like, well, uh-oh. So I'm like, is he trying to say that no? Is Luo suggesting that he likes Shen and that Shen likes him? And Shen's oblivious. So he's like the manual, everything. So you can keep practicing while I meditate. It's like, why haven't I realized it all along? I'm like, oh my God, the one who raised me up every time when I was in despair has been him. Yeah, like giving him the sword, giving him the manual. Yes. Don't lose it again. It's all because of someone like him. And he's like, nothing will happen to you even if I'm going to die. He has put everything on the line because he believes in me. As he like breaks the blade, right? Oh my God. And Shen's like, what? Shen's like, did we alter the storyline? Are we doing good? Am I going to be in a pickle jar? I love that in that moment, Luo interprets the things that he's done. He's like, yeah, he was giving me some tough love at the beginning, but then he showed me real love. And I know now that it was just because he cares about me and he believes in me. And I'm like, well, yes. I don't know if Shen realizes all of this, but you're on the right track. It's so good. Like, I love that montage. That moment is amazing. I love it. And then when the sword breaks, he's like, master, and he looks and is able to get the sword in the stone. I love it. I love everybody has this shocked expression, and you cut to Shen, and he's like, I expected it. And then he manages to knock the boulder out and then knock him out too. Love it. Love it. And everybody cheers him on. And so rather than being called useless by everybody, he's now cheered for. And everybody believes in him and cheers him on. And he's so excited. It's so good. You're just like, even Ming Fan's like, yeah, oh crap, I'm cheering him on. It's so good. Like how big his eyes are. And then he looks to Shen. And Shen has he nods his head and has a little smile. Shut up. Shut up. And Luo's like, oh my God, I did it. I love it. Oh my God. Yeah. I think that cements Luo's like, yeah, me and Shen. and the girls, you know, Liu and Sha, they're both like, all right, protagonist. We'll join your posse, your entourage. I love it. I like Ming Fan. I like Ming Fan for a second questions why he's cheering. And then he's like, screw it. I'm just going to do it anyway. It's great. So yeah, and then getting famous after the invasion of the demon clan at Skev Heaven Sky Clan. It got the attention of Liu and Sha. So the main character's satisfaction increased by 500. I like that Shen goes, oh, deducting 1,000 but only increasing 500. How's the math work out on this? And then, oh my God, I love the expression when Sha looks at him like, how dare you? And then she looks at him like, fine. See how it is. And he's like, please go somewhere else to punish your underlings. And then that's when the Elder Hammer stands up. And he's going to attack Luo and kill him. And the thing about it is, Shen knows, he keeps forgetting. Shen knows that Luo can't die, but he's like, shit, I keep forgetting. And he keeps putting himself to keep him safe and protect him. And that's when he backs up and gets touched by the poison, right? He's like, I was scammed again. He's invincible. He's like, why did I try to save him? I love he looks up at the author in the sky. He's like, why me? Freaking love Shen. Shen's amazing. And then he's like, surprisingly, the great Shen Qingchao will die with me. It's all worth it. And Luo is just like, oh, how dare you? And he stabs him and is like, he grabs his horn and is like, give me the antidote or I'll kill you first. And Shen's like, oh, wait, what? Because Luo is like in protect mode and Luo's like, how dare you? He's not going to die. Give me the antidote. And Shen's like, Luo is trying to save me? What is this? I love it. And she's like, no, there's no cure. Any mortal is like, this poison cannot be cured for humans. This unique poison of the demon clan has no cure. Now, she said for humans. For a second, I wondered because of that, if like Shen was going to have to become a demon instead of Luo being like the leader with the little marking on his face. If Shen was going to have to go through this process. And I'm like, we don't have time to find a cliff to throw Shen off of. So I was like, how is this going to work? But he tries to make the assumption of being like, well, I'm a cultivator, so that's why the poison doesn't work. He's like, no cure. I love that she calls. I love he just looks up at the sky like, are you freaking serious? Because she was like, yes, this situation that we're in that's caused by you not being able to be cured is called no cure. Like Shen's just like, are you freaking serious? That is so funny. I love the way he looks up. He's like, you couldn't come up with a better name. And the way he's just like, oh. Like the way he's like, oh, are you kidding me? Oh, like such like a damn valley girl. It's so funny. He's like, well, Miss Shaw, haven't you forgotten? I've been training for years. I thought he was going to like pull something out of his ass, which he kind of tries to here. He's like, anyone with a mid-level golden essence can they be considered immortal? And he tries to like create like an aura blast and it doesn't work. And he's like, oh shit. And she's like, well, I'm not sure if you're immortal, but I have a way of finding out whether you have been poisoned. And he's like, you can tell by giving out the aura blast with your right hand. And he's like, well, I don't mind giving it a try. And she's like, well, then let's have a palm off. And I'm like, when did this become Zoolander? Where's David Bowie to judge? What's happening? He's like, you've caused chaos here, and I've been putting up with you until now. We'll have a palm strike off with our lives on the line. Otherwise, people might think that the Heaven's Sky Clan is such a mouthful to say. It's not like Sky Tribe. It's not like Heavenly Clan. It's Heaven's Sky's Clan. It is, again, the nomenclature here is, I know it's satirizing and parroting. It's a mouthful where people are allowed to come and go as they please. And that's the end. So we don't even get to see what the bet is. They don't even show us what the bet is. That is a choice. I wanted to see what the rules were going to be. This is like the Untamed. If you've not watched the Untamed, it's the live action version of Modazushi. And there are a couple episodes of that series where they just end like mid-sentence and you're like, what? Why did we end there? And that's exactly what happened here. So we have to wait till next episode. How dare. So when I get to the novel, I'm going to fashion Whiteboard Kun out and we'll have like a timeline thing going. We'll do that when Whiteboard Kun comes out for the novel. So don't worry. I will find a way to keep track of the changes of what's proposed at the beginning of the novel and the changes as we go. So we'll find a way to keep track of that somehow. We'll make it work. But I probably will not wait to watch episode 6 before I read the next set of comments, only because I have to travel in a week and I need to have this recorded before I go. So I will probably check out episode 6. And then when I get back, I will have a lot more comments to talk about, hopefully, before episode 7. But I can't believe we're halfway through the season. I can't believe it. Now I know why y'all want season 2, because we don't get very far, it seems. But I don't know. I don't want to know. What I don't want to know is in what relation. In my head, I'm wondering, well, is this first season just volume 1? Maybe, but it seems like we're not even covering a whole lot there unless there's extra stuff in the novel. So don't tell me the answer to that. I'll figure it out when we get there. But those are just thoughts I've got on my mind. But in any case, I hope you like this reaction discussion. Shen, my dude, what can we do? So I'm just so proud of Luo, and I love that he kind of cemented his feelings for Shen in this moment, and we'll just see where it takes us. So I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more of Scum Villain's self-saving system. Bye!